and welcome to another episode of Heart Rock Cafe, RMC's very own youth podcast. And thank you for joining us today. Today's topic is actually a very riveting one. It's how much should parents interfere in the faith of their children? So for this, we are joined by Mr. Herbert and Father Sandeep from RMC. And I think I should pose this question straight to Father Sandeep. Father, what do you think? Do you think parents interfere in the faith of their children? Do you think it's okay to do so? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so it's quite a loaded question, maybe a sensitive question for some people, but it's also a very common experience. As a pastor, I have in my own experience had parents who have come and complained that they're really finding it hard to control their kids, or they feel like their kids are getting out of control, and so it usually comes as a complaint, like how do I handle this child? And on the other hand, I also have had the experience of kids coming and saying when they are teens or when they are young adults that my parents still think that I'm a child and they're treating me like a child. They don't understand me. They always impose their view on me, and I feel like they're interfering in my life too much. So it is a very commonly felt experience. And to address this question of how much should parents interfere in the faith of their young children, I think what we need to do is to clarify what we mean by interference, because every parent has been caring for a child from the time the child was a helpless baby, and everything needed to be done for this child. The child would not have survived if the parent didn't give, either the mother or the father or both, didn't give 100% attention to the child might not have survived to this age. Now, suddenly, when the child hits like 11, 12 years old, or even later, maybe 13, 14, suddenly the child starts to act different. It doesn't share as much as he or she used to, or suddenly seems to be keeping secrets from the parents, not being open about where he is going or she is going. And so this is a cause for concern for the parents, because up to then they've always been in this mode of protection. And so what the parent is seeing as their protective urge out of love for the child interprets as interference, right? So we need to evolve as a family when our children are growing. From the time the child is in its adolescence, there is a different mode of parenting that the parents need to get into, and it's good for parents to be aware of that. And for children, they will behave in the way that their hormones and their automatic natural growth processes are going to lead them to. As young people, they are also going to be attracted by what their friends are interested in, what they are really enjoying, and they're going to be curious to learn about that. So it's good for parents to be able to shift mode from being in the protection mode to accompaniment mode when the child hits teens and then later on as a young adult. It's important to be aware of that. So maybe we could hear something from Herbert, who is a parent of two lovely young people, a son who's 20 years old and a daughter who's 23, I believe. Yeah. So do you think there is cause for concern for parents? Why would parents really feel anxious? Is there really a need to be anxious about young people when they reach their teens?
Yes, Father. So, as you rightly said, the journey has so far been, very smooth sailing, and all of a sudden you come to rough weather, influences of society, and the freedom that they get is what has a bearing on the child, and the child is most of the time confused, and then to get the child back on track is what the difficulty the parents suddenly feel, and that the parent also has to change gears, as you said, and
Yeah.
then roll on the
Did you
road.
have some experiences where you were really anxious for your kids when they were growing up?
Yes, there were a lot of incidents. Yeah, so probably if I have to talk of one incident when my child was out of his comfort zone, and just to get to be comfortable with their friends, they just go into the mode of partying, and and then the challenge of not keeping the parent informed of what the child is doing. Okay, I mean what he or she is doing, and that that is a period of uncertainty.
Yeah. But did you also feel like there was a shift in your idea of what their faith should be? In the sense, did you see a shift in, okay, maybe they were perhaps attending prayer with you every day, like the family prayer, and then suddenly, okay, they are not as interested anymore. Did you find any kind of shift there? Because
Yes, most certainly there was a shift,
yeah.
or maybe a perceived shift by the parent, and because right from the childhood they would go to church with the parents and with us, and once the freedom has been attained,
Right.
then the child feels that okay, now I have a greater responsibility with my friends or at college, and then the attendance at church slowly takes a back seat.
Right.
The importance is dwindled, and yeah, so the child, then we need to reinforce the importance of coming to church at least one day of the week, and the other days when it is possible.
Right. But I also think it's like fair to be reasonable, because I think from about 14 up, I would say fairly, or kids have so much of pressure. They need to accomplish things. They need to be up with the times. There's so many things happening around them. There's peer pressure. And all of these things need to be addressed, right? So, and there's only then that they can do it. You only go through college hopefully once. And like the UG and the PUC and all of that, you go through it when you are in your teens, when you're a young adult. And that's the only time that you can kind of do it. And there are opportunities that are presented to you at that time that you perhaps will not get later on. It will just be different. Like if you have to have the same experience of, your first semester in college and all the new things you will have there, that can only happen when you're 18. It will not happen when you're like 24 or 25. It's just different.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. So when you're a young adult, and you're at the threshold of like this whole big world that's open to you, I think it's also important for parents to like understand that there are all these opportunities presented to them, and they should be able to or allowed to explore that, because you cannot really do it any other way, any other time rather. So
yeah, so I think in this context, some of us parents, we are modern Pharisees. I would call ourselves modern Pharisees, because we, tend to think we know everything, and we do not give the child that, that freedom that they need to explore, but within the limits of, their safety.
right.
So that is one thing which we need to be aware of, and although we are concerned about our children, we need to know, set for some kind of boundaries, not leaving it open-ended, but give them the freedom that they need to explore to an extent, and then guide them. And I think that's where the spiritual upbringing holds a lot.
Right. And it's also, I think, maybe important for kids to understand, right, where parents are coming from. Because while it's annoying to perhaps have to listen to somebody tell you what to do when you're like, no, I just want to figure this out on my own. They're probably coming from a place, you have to understand where they're coming from, whether it's a place of fear or anxiety, or, they've seen things that you we don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
So, picking up from what both of you have said, I think there is this important dynamic that happens in every family of the young people wanting to experiment, explore the new opportunities that modern life is offering them, and which perhaps the parents do not understand fully, and they fear. They foresee a lot of the potential dangers, but they do not notice the significant benefits, and that the young person can risk being left behind if they don't know all the latest
Yes.
developments that are happening. Let's talk about like the latest TV show, or the latest thing in social media, or in video games, or opportunities to go out with friends and enjoy things together with friends. So these are the things that attract a young person. And a parent who loves the child and is seeing himself or herself as the protector of the child always looks at the potential harm that can be caused to the child, and out of the anxiety to protect, there is this tug of war that happens, and it can get quite ugly, I think, in terms of the arguments, the tempers lost, the words said.
Right.
And sometimes it could even like end up with corporal punishment in the Indian context, you know.
Yeah.
And that really breaks down negotiation and dialogue. You're at the sensitive age of an adolescent, or a teenager, or a young adult, you can no longer treat the child as a child. You know, even today,
Yeah.
we do not accept corporal punishment of children in schools, right? So the challenge of parenting is all the more difficult in our times. So you need to be able to dialogue with the child in a way that does not harm the child in the long run, and does not ruin your relationship with the child in the long run. So to address this need, I remember an important anecdote, which is a real life incident, which I heard another priest share with us about how a good parent, or how effective a dialogue with a teen can be in helping to show the child, show the young person that there are options. Yes, you have freedom, but think about the potential consequences before you make a choice. For example, there was this young girl. She was in her teens, and she had started to go to college, and she had made a good set of friends in college. And the friends were planning a weekend trip outside of town, to the countryside somewhere, and all the friends were going to be there. And so she comes to the parents and asks them for permission, particularly to her father, to go for this weekend trip with the friends. And the mother was not there at the time when she asked for the permission. And so the father said, hold on, I'll speak to your mom, and after we have had a conversation, then we will get back to you. So she patiently waited for her parents to have their discussion. And while the mother and father were discussing things, they felt like, we do not know whether all her friends, they're just new friends that she has made just a few months ago, can we trust her to them? It was going to be a mixed group of boys and girls, whether there would be alcohol, whether there would be drugs. These were the fears that the parents were expressing in their own personal dialogue. And since the father was the disciplinarian in the house, the girl naturally came back to him to ask what the decision was at the end of the day. And so both the mother and father sat her down, and then they said, see, we are inclined to let you go on this trip, but we also want to express to you that we have these fears. And they mentioned them, all that they had. They didn't hide anything about what they feared would happen. And if you are comfortable going, we respect you. We believe that you will be responsible. But you take the choice.
Oh.
You make the choice. And of course, the girl took some time. She also thought about it. And when she got back to them, she decided that she was not going to go to the trip.
Nice.
So this is one example of how a parent can effectively dialogue with the child. Not to say that, the girl could have easily chosen another way. you know. But in this case, she considered that what the parents were saying was out of love and out of real concern for potential dangers that they foresaw, and she was not willing to take the risk. So,
Right,
yeah.
but that's also in this situation, it's an ideal situation where, you know, there is dialogue happening. A lot of the times when there is conflict of, oh, you're not going to church, you're not saying the rosary, or you're not coming with us for this and this that we're doing. The issue is it's very polarized. It's very no, this is how I want to do it. No, this is how I want to do it, and two different parties, right?
Then it becomes like a might is right kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
because the parents are bigger and stronger and older.
Yeah.
That's why they get to do whatever they want, and just because I'm smaller and I'm younger, I cannot do what I want. Have you had those kind of difficult conversations with or have you heard other parents having similar challenging conversations?
Yes, I think that's probably a lot in the new generation
Right.
kids, especially knowing that parents are not ready to, or are not do not have the understanding of the current generation and the way
the way it's
life
working
is,
now.
the
Yeah.
way things work now. And as you rightly said, social media and gadgets have a huge impact.
Yeah.
So what do you think about it?
Yeah, so no, as the child gets out of the comfort of the home and of school and gets into a more open world of the college education, the child just gets lost and is not doing the same things that they used to do, skipping mass with the reasons that there is a college program,
Oh, yes.
or there are events
Right.
being organized at college on a Sunday. And yes, and then there is practice in the evenings, so there is no
Yeah.
time for the regular family prayer.
Right.
And and then the parent, as a parent, we try to tell the child that, okay, now it is your responsibility to ensure that you are there on time. And of course it doesn't work, and then after some time, then we tell the child, it is now your turn to start the prayer. It is
Right.
I as a parent may be late, but if there is a fixed time for prayer, you start the prayer. You will call the rest of the family and initiate the prayer. So that is a must, and I think that the child at some point has to come back, because too much of freedom is going to be damaging for the future.
Okay, so that's the thing I'd like to ask about that is, how much is too much freedom when you're trying to explore the world and when you're trying to get an understanding of how the world works, when you're at the threshold of the rest of your life? So how much freedom is too much freedom if you're not given the opportunity to make choices? You will not fully be a successful adult. Like you have to be presented the option of, oh, I should go to church or I should spend my time doing something else, and then make that choice and be allowed to stick to it. Don't you think that's also important to give the youth or to give children that option?
Yes. So although I say that the parent is not fully ready to to guide a child at this stage, advanced stage of life, but at the same time, the parent needs to have some rules, some boundaries defined.
I think it's all connected to the values that are at stake when it comes to freedom. No? We need to understand the basic values that the parents are trying to communicate to the child. So when it is about insisting on attending mass on Sundays, it is to emphasize that God is the source of life. God is the source of every good thing in our life. And we acknowledge that by setting apart a certain amount of time during the week for God. No excuses, because without the ground of our being, nothing else works. And that is what we express as Christians when we make it a point to attend Sunday Mass. right? And if we have such a busy life with such hectic schedules, we at least schedule some time for God during the middle of the week, and when you're in that transitionary phase of your life, when you're in college, then it's important to emphasize that all the more for parents, because there is this danger, this temptation to be swept away by the ways of the world or the worldly ways of thinking, that you don't need God, or God is always something that you push to the background. Addressing the problem of you mentioned about parents being modern day Pharisees, and I think young people are very sensitive to that. What they're looking for is authenticity, and when they see that their parents are, just for the sake of society, projecting one image of themselves and another image at home, it becomes all the more difficult for the parents to be moral authorities in the life of the child, you know and it's not the fault of the child, especially given the it's a challenge at any stage, in any age of history, to be a parent. Okay, and I don't want to be harsh on any parent, because I fully empathize that it's always a challenge to bring up children in the right way, okay, in the Christian way. And there's no one single way of being a good parent.
Yeah, that's right.
There are different family situations, there are different needs and different expectations that each family comes with. And but given all the difficult circumstances of work, of the pressures of life, of all the commitments that you have outside the family, does the family have some way or means of showing their common commitment to God? Each person in the family has their own spiritual journey to make, but the family is an important part of that journey. In fact, St. Paul says in the letter to the Ephesians that in the context of giving some other pastoral instructions to Christians, he says, I thank God, the Heavenly Father, for every family in heaven and earth takes its name from him. I'm paraphrasing the quotation, but hopefully it will be on the screen. And what it means is, family has an important role to play. Parents have an important role to play in that journey of the young person. And sometimes it is in insisting on certain things that the young person doesn't immediately see the value of it until they meet a certain situation where they fall back on their past experience and begin to reflect. So it's difficult for us when we are young to
Right.
see that.
So I was just thinking about what you said, Father, and the idea that, you want to come together and have, as a family, you are praying together and spending that time together. I think that's really important, but I can imagine, say you've had a sticky few days with your folks. You want to do something, or you have plans, and those plans are being thwarted by your parents or whoever is your caretaker, right? And you are now bitter, or you're feeling a certain kind of way, and they're asking you to come and pray. That's a very conflicting feeling, right? You're like, okay, you're not being understanding of my situation at all, but you're asking me to come and do something that is about devotion, about grace, and about understanding, right? So that's a very, like, how do you manage that? Because youth should be allowed to be youth also, and like that's kind of the one time you should be allowed to be stubborn and a little bit stupid, if because that's the only age we can be allowed to be that way, right? You can't be like a middle-aged person and make the decisions you made as a teenager.
Yahi umar hai kar le galti se mistake.
That's the one.
In a way, perhaps as adults we've learned through making mistakes, and we're kind of anticipating the mistakes that young people should make, to protect them from making the mistakes. But actually there is a legitimate room for young people to make mistakes if they're not really going to be detrimental to their physical, emotional, or spiritual health. For example, one priest shared with me that when they went to preach a mission in a parish, they had one of the parents in the parish come to speak to him personally after the preaching, and they said to him, "Father, we want you to come home and give some advice to our youngster at home who's giving us a lot of trouble, and give him some advice to help him to get in the right path." And so the priest went to visit this family, okay, and when he knocked at the door or rang the doorbell, the youngster, there was a young man who opened the door, and he had these great dreadlocks, this kind of fancy hairstyle. And the first thing that the priest said, "Wow, that's a beautiful hairstyle that you have." And he didn't realize it at the time, but the main issue in the house was that the parents were utterly devastated when they saw this child growing this hair in this way.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
And they were fighting with the kid because they felt it was not appropriate for him, coming from the family that they are, perhaps, that he had this kind of a hairstyle. Now, this is a natural, a beautiful expression of the teen years where you experiment with your look.
Right.
You'll have girls dyeing their hair in pink and green and
Right.
red, and sometimes parents will not appreciate the fashion choices of their kids, and I think that's the least harmful thing that a child can experiment on. And thanks be to God, they're only experimenting on that. There are so many other things they could experiment which are much more dangerous, like drugs, alcohol, which can lead to alcoholism, and then smoking addiction that once you get into, even if you want to, it's not easy to come out, right? Or even worse, they could be experimenting with relationships. We've had in the news some terrible instances where they've had live-in relationships, and then it's turned really bad so that one has lost their life. So then with premarital sex, you have teen pregnancies, and then the connected temptation to abortion. So there are so many things that the child will not foresee, that the parents are afraid of. Now, having said that, so I hope I've done justice to both. There's a legitimate room for experimentation for young people with the opportunities that are available, but it also benefits the young person to listen to parents because they can foresee certain things that the young person may not foresee.
Yes.
Having said all that, I want to make it clear, especially to the young audience who might be watching, is that I'm not endorsing any particular fashion styles.
No,
okay?
Father.
Okay, it all depends on whether it's an urban setup, your cultural values, whether it's a rural setup. So we need to respect there are reasons why a particular culture comes with a particular convention. Okay, so we don't throw the baby out with bathwater, as they say. But what is important as a Catholic is, when it comes to fashion choices, is it expressing modesty? Is it expressing my respect for myself and for others? And is it in a way accepted by a significant section of society? I think these are reasonable boundaries to place upon fashion choices. And to the parents, it would be advisable not to get fixated on these temporary situations in the life of your young child, because they are easily remedied over time. They may change their fashion choices, they may reflect on their life a little more, and those things may not be as attractive as they were at one particular time.
Yes.
Me as a young person not wanting to sit down for rosary because I'm mad at my parents, right? I feel a lot of that that kind of internalization and reaction to, say, prayer is perhaps because I'm also watching what my parents are doing and how they are reacting to my situation.
You have two sides to yourself.
Yeah.
And as when I observed, just a few weeks back, that my son started to drive, and suddenly my wife observed that, she said, "Oh, look at the style of driving." And
Like yours.
then,
It was
then
like
it
yours?
hit me. Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's when it hit me. Hey, this guy is just, totally imitating the way I drive.
Some young people have Instagram accounts where they influence others
Oh, yes.
about their faith.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing that young people, so that's an opportunity,
Yes.
on social media. And we did make mistakes while growing up, I suppose. And but the beautiful thing about God's grace is that He can write straight with crooked lines.
Thank you all for joining us in this episode, but stay tuned for more. The second part is coming shortly next month. And in the meanwhile, from everyone here at RMC at the Youth Faith Podcast, signing off from Heart Rock Cafe, where we have heartfelt conversations on the solid rock of faith over a cup of hot coffee.